Journalists actually play a crucial role in sharing information, and if they're being attacked, it can affect the accuracy and trustworthiness of the information being shared. Now, the International Press Center, that's the IPC, has expressed outrage that journalists are still being targeted and brutally assaulted by security officials, thugs, and anti-protesters at the #EndBadGovernance demonstrations. Now, they're also concerned that these attacks undermine the integrity of the information disseminated to the public. Now, joining us on the show to dissect more of this is Lanre Arogundade. He's Executive Director, International Press Center. And we also have Emmnauel Bagudu, our reporter, correspondent in Abuja, joining us to actually share his own experience during the protest as well. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the conversation.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good evening. All right, so let's begin with you, Lanre. Let's hear your analysis of the root causes of the attacks on journalists during the End Bad Governance protests.
I think basically we're dealing with lack of protection for journalists by security agents. We're also dealing with lack of, hostility towards journalists by some elements who just feel that journalists should not cover the protest. Because like rightly said, we also had a group called anti-protest, protesters. And then we have hoodlums or so-called hoodlums attacking journalists. These are the three categories that we see in this particular, instance. For the security agents, we're quite alarmed because there was, in the build-up to this protest, we, actually cautioned journalists about the need to take their safety seriously. And we called on the law enforcement and security agents to protect journalists because we've had experience of journalists being assaulted during the protests.
Yeah, definitely.
And we felt if they are able to identify themselves, then they will decide they will get some protection.
All right, Lanre, now talking about journalists being, harassed or attacked, and those who would identify themselves, I would actually like us to take time to speak to our correspondent in Abuja, Emmnauel Bagudu, who was himself attacked and tear-gassed during the protest. So let's hear his own story, and then we'll come back to you and then, hear what you have to say about how journalists were treated or are being treated during the protest. Now, Emmnauel, thank you for joining us once again. Now, can you walk me through the events leading up to the moment when you were tear-gassed and harassed during the protest?
Yeah, it all happened at the National Stadium on Saturday. I was talking about day 3 of the protest. The Moshood Abiola National Stadium is the approved venue according to courts for the protest. So the clash, happened where police officers said they don't want to see anybody in front of the stadium. You can either be inside the stadium or no protest. Meanwhile, the protesters have alleged that there were cases of hoodlums hijacking their protest. So if they find themselves inside the stadium, they will come in. So the police, since they cannot convince the protesters to go inside the stadium, they opened fire. And they didn't even listen to the side of their story, the side of the protesters' story. Because previously, the previous day, hoodlums attacked. Some hoodlums, some thugs with wearing face masks, very horrible masks, came in and used live ammunition on protesters. So the protesters don't want to be locked inside the stadium in case they have been attacked. Yeah, so they opened fire. In fact, the reason why the police got, enraged, got angry and opened fire was because the cameramen and the journalists were filming them. So we're filming them because they were actually pointing at guns to protesters. One of them pointed a gun to me. So when they noticed that nobody's going into the stadium, they opened fire, and they opened the fire with so unprofessional.
Okay,
that it affected innocent citizens. Yeah.
Emmnauel,
Yeah.
did you feel like you were being targeted because you were a journalist, or specifically as a journalist? Were you wearing any visible identification or even carrying equipment that clearly marked you as a member of the press before the attack?
Yes. I felt I was being targeted because the police actually felt that we were giving publicity to the protesters, and not doing a job and trying to tell the stories how it is. They feel that we're taking sides. That's what they believe. So that's why they don't care whether you are innocent, whether you're a protester, whether you're a journalist. They don't care. Put on the fire. You saw the one that happened with our colleague Mary Adebayo on the first day. The policeman actually targeted at her leg. I don't know why he was doing that, whether he was testing the tear gas on her leg. That was why she had that swollen leg for days. So that was the issue. You don't look at whether somebody is wearing a vest or, with a press inscription on it. You don't shoot, because you believe that even that person that is even covering is even giving publicity to the protesters. And so, as far as you're concerned, everybody is your enemy. That is what the Nigerian police are doing. So it is very, very important for us to state it clearly how it happened. That was what happened. They should be able. I felt targeted, as I said, and I felt my colleagues are also targeted. Thank you.
All right, so but can you describe the physical and emotional impact of being tear gassed? Did it affect your ability to continue reporting?
Yes, it affected my ability. I couldn't write my story. I wrote my story from this instance, but I couldn't voice it. I couldn't even download the video. I couldn't copy my visuals. I didn't stop covering. Even with the tear gas, I was live. I didn't stop covering. I was rescued by the civilian security guys at the gate of the National Motion Abiola. So they were the one that sneaked my camera person inside into the security post. It was through the window that we managed to get some shots, and we continued shooting up to when we discovered that we don't have the energy again to continue, because our eyes were all covered with tear gas. I would just have to quickly rush to get. My job that day. My job went halfway. I was able to send stories. I was able to copy some videos, but I couldn't edit. My colleagues later helped me, called me on the phone, asked me what happened, and they helped me send some of these visuals where they are supposed to be.
Okay, there are other Emmnauel, there are other journalists that were being targeted as well. I know of one Punch newspaper photojournalist, and I heard of a group of journalists who were in a vehicle and they're being shot at. Now, do you feel like journalists were trying that they were trying to intimidate or even silence these journalists?
Yes. Our vehicle was also shot at. Our vehicle was also shot at. Were two buses. They actually trying to intimidate and silence journalists. Let us not talk, because they made it point clear. One of the security agencies made it clear that it is because we are promoting, we are reporting the protest. That is why the protesters are having the guts to invite hoodlums or even make the protest violent. So they made it clear that we're promoting protest.
So
they
said you're enabling the violence that took place during the protests.
Because when they say it's because you are promoting, you are covering them. They say you shouldn't cover protests. If you are covering protests, they believe that it is because you are covering protests. That is why they don't care if you are affected. Because if at all they believe that we are partners in progress in this job as security agencies and journalists, we are partners in progress, they are supposed to protect us. They shouldn't fire tear gas. If you want to fire tear gas, you can call your friends and tell them, look, I want to fire tear gas on these protesters. Journalists clear out. Who clear out? When they fire, then we cover. But they didn't say so. They fire and then they will target you, not even minding what is happening to you. So those are things that we will notice. I will send it point blank the way it is. And then, of course, we will continue to partner with them if they're interested. And we will not be intimidated by any police officer. We're going to do our job within the bit of the law.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Emmnauel, for speaking to us and sharing your experience on, the protests. Thank you. All right, now let's get back to you, Lanre. Now, after hearing Emmnauel's experience during the protest, what do you make of, everything that he has said?
It's very, very appalling. It's very, very worrisome. And we're actually shocked because this is a new dimension to attacks on journalists. And from what your reporter was saying, it's like there's a mindset that the media should not report the protest, give publicity to it, that would encourage the protesters. So if that were to be the case, then I think this security should have come out clearly and said we are banning the media so that the whole world will know that there's a cover up as it is. So for me, it's quite embarrassing. And if you look at the pattern of attacks, it looks like it's actually orchestrated across the country, where journalists that are clearly identifiable with their working instruments, with their tools, were being harassed. In any case, even if the policemen or soldiers were not sure if they were real journalists, they could ask them to identify themselves. And I'm sure that journalists go around with the identity cards of the organizations or of that of their professional bodies. That would have been a professional way of handling things. Not when you solely order journalists and then you are firing directly, at them. That's why, we are demanding investigation. The using of, live bullets or whatever you call it on journalists cannot be acceptable under any circumstances because journalists are doing their duty. And when we cover protests, we are not covering protests because we ourselves or the journalists are protesters or ab initio are supporting the protesters. Essentially, just to bring accurate information that can even be helpful to the government because security agents won't even see everything. But journalists will talk to the protesters, they will talk to others and gather public opinion. There was another aspect of this attack, which was that I think your colleague, Bernard, also, who was at the Lekki toll gate.
Yeah, that was the day before the protest started. Yes,
another day the protest started. Another colleague from, from Arise TV were barred from interviewing people. I don't just get it. They were told not to interview anyone. Again, the mindset comes in because according to the police, if they interview one or two people, that would then mean that crowd, is gathering. It doesn't just happen that you would say, just stay there, just put, let your camera capture what is going on, but don't talk to anybody. Part of our responsibility is to talk to people. Why are you here? Why are you protesting? Ask questions.
Okay, Larry, now as the executive director of the International Press Center, has the IPC been able to engage with the government and also these security agencies to be able to develop and implement effective mechanisms for protecting journalists and also promoting press freedom, particularly during times of civil unrest or protests?
We've been on this for a long time. And actually, you see, you don't need physical engagement for law enforcement agencies to know their responsibilities. We've had forums where we've had policemen present. I recall that about 2 years ago, we had a forum in Abuja looking at a national mechanism for the protection of journalists. And the first PRO was represented at that program. So we've been having dialogue, and the problem is that we don't see the results of this dialogue when things like this happen, because you would expect some level of professionalism when things like this happen and law enforcement agents are deployed across the country. So it's a continuous dialogue. Of course, we're working towards now a national policy on protection, safety and protection of journalists, press freedom as well, which would involve engagement, with the authorities. But the point I'm making is that you can have all those engagements, you can have all those talks. What is important is to walk, the talk. And I think that ahead of this protest, knowing the tension that was there, what we would have expected would be that was for the police command and other commands to have given firm instructions to say, as much as possible, provide, protection, for journalists. In fact, part of their duty is even if you are having clashes during this protest or thugs are coming in and so on, we expect them to be able to say, please, journalists, gather on this side so that you can be safe. And then where they feel the situation is getting out of hand, they can advise them and say, well, move in this direction. Not to be hitting the journalists with the butts of their
Okay.
guns, firing tear gas at them. So we have to step up the game. We would still go back to talk about this, to talk about the fact that to ask questions as to what really happened. But I just hope that there will also be diligent prosecution of those allegedly responsible for these appalling attacks.
All right, let's hear your assessment of the impact of the End Bad Governance protest on the media landscape in Nigeria. Now, the attacks didn't deter these journalists one bit from continuing with their jobs. It actually made them more dogged. How do you think that, this doggedness will shape the future of journalism in the country?
Well, we can first salute the courage of the journalists who covered this protest in spite of all the challenges facing them. And let us also put on record that these attacks didn't just come from law enforcement agents. We also had, all kind of, individuals who had their own, grievances. And so one of our demands would also be that when people call for protest, part of their responsibility too is to ensure the protection of journalists that they invite or that come on their own to cover those events is quite important. We look at it in that direction. So we can salute the courage of the journalists. We can thank them for bringing information to the citizens and to the government itself about why people are aggrieved and how the demonstrations are panning out. Asking tough questions in some instances, like finding out from the protesters, okay, you say you are going ahead, the president has spoken, and all those kind of things. They are very, very important. But going forward too, one of the things we would be talking within ourselves, within the profession, is first the question of personal safety. There has to be more safety consciousness on the part of the journalists. We have to devise mechanisms of avoiding, some of these attacks. Some may be inevitable, but it's also very, very important. It's also important for us to talk about conflict sensitivity in the reporting of conflicts like this, because at the end of the day, our duty is to tell the truth and also minimize harm. And when passions are inflamed, I think we need to also weigh carefully, how we report. Prior to the protests, there were so many inflammatory statements on the parts of elements in government, which you could sense that this will bring a lot of danger, and also even some of we have a duty to know that we have to find means of reporting in such a way that our reporting is factual, but it's not necessarily provoking or encouraging any.
Definitely,
incident.
Larry. Now, speaking of duties, and in addition to ensuring, that the journalists are protected.
But like I said, what is very important is that overall, we can only salute the courage of these journalists, facing tear gas and still trying, to get information out there.
Okay.
The kind of attack we witnessed shouldn't have been their lot.
All right, Larry. Now, like I was saying, in addition to, the duties, you're speaking of your duties and also ensuring that the journalists are protected. Now, what support has the ICPC, given to some of these journalists? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Because you were saying IPC.
IPC, I beg your pardon, sorry. Is there any support that you're providing to the affected journalists and any efforts to push for accountability? It could be legal or otherwise.
Well, we have a number of options. Some of them we already mentioned, demanding that there should be investigation and prosecution of any law enforcement agent that is believed to be responsible for some of these attacks. We're also speaking to these journalists because one thing is to report the attacks. We don't even know the effects on them, other things that they could suffer, psychosocial trauma, and so on and so forth. So sometimes we provide, support in that in that kind of area. At the end of the day, whatever, we are just, a civil society organization, and we can only act according to the wishes of the journalists concerned. And what we do encourage really is that when you feel that your right has been violated, you should also seek a legal, redress. And maybe that way you get appropriate justice or maybe compensation along the line. So there are so many things. It's not just IPC alone. So many press freedom, media organizations, and even civil society organizations that are taking stock of what is going on. And at some stage, there will be decisions as to how best, to address this issue. But one thing that is key, like you mentioned earlier on, is a need for us to have more dialogue with the relevant authorities about, how do we manage the relationship between, the media and their agents when we have moments of, national, crisis. What instructions do they pass to their men on the field? That is very, very important. That is very, very key, because it's like a bad, it's not even just history repeating itself, it's like a bad history repeating itself. During COVID-19, when curfew was, because now they've imposed curfew in some states. So I'm saying this advisedly. With this curfew now, it's like there's restriction of movement. So we would expect the police command to inform their men, the army, and whichever other military agency that is out there, to say that, look, in spite of the curfew, journalists would have to move around. They would have to even tell whether the curfew is effective, whether people are obeying it. They would have to get to work. And we're dealing with 24/7 reporting these days. And there are journalists who are on different shifts or different duties. Some of them would have to go home. So we need to have that comprehensive engagement for them to understand that even now that we're having this tension, we're having this curfew, journalists will still work. And they must find a way of enlightening their men on the field to ensure that they're not molested.
Okay. Now, social media has also been blamed for the violence that erupted during the protests. Now, I'd like to know, what is the IPC's position on the role of social media in promoting press freedom and journalist safety?
Well, social media comes with, it's like a kind of a double-edged sword, as one may want to put it, because essentially it's an avenue for citizens to express themselves. They take pictures, this is what is happening. The obligation of the conventional media is to ensure that the facts are verified. So when you see something that is trending on social media that you know is not true, you quickly dispel it. I mean, some people said the other flag by the side of the president when he was making the broadcast was Russian flag. There's some level of ignorance out there. The Nigerian Armed Forces had its own flag and all those kind of things. So these are ways by which we can help, but don't just bring everybody together and dismiss them on social media. I feel that the conventional media is trying to sanitize that space. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that you should, clamp down on social media, because there's a sense in which it also self-regulates. So when people share information, and good enough is that there are diverse sides to these, conflicts, to these protests. There are those for government, there are those against government. So when elements opposed to government or are pro-protesters put out an information that is false, the other people quickly counter and say this is what happened. What we need to encourage people is to say that, look, first, if you are media operating online, and then you are also sharing information on your social media handles, pay attention to what you share. Ensure that the information is factually accurate. And also, where you have seen things that are trending on social media that are not true, also correct that and say it's not true. So everybody has used social media. So when they say, "Oh, social media is causing the problem, the violence," we have to do an holistic assessment, because we also have spokespersons of government that also post things on social media that some considered highly inflammatory, that some felt was targeting a particular ethnic group or was derogatory of that ethnic group, that amounted to issuing of threats. So social media does not exist in isolation. It's not as if
Are you also
what I'm saying that in essence is that when it comes to social media and we do the right analysis, we then discover that government has its own role to play in calling their representatives to order when they speak officially online. Protesters too have the same duty, and also citizens, that at the end of the day, this avenue that has given us opportunity to express ourselves should not be misused.
So does that mean that you're also in support of the social media regulation bill?
Not at all. Not at all. It does not translate to that. Because from what I've said, those who will want to regulate the social media are also guilty of spreading, disinformation, of incitement on social media, of hate speech. How would they also be regulated? That is the objection we've been raising all along, because when you look at the social media bill, it's more or less targeting the media. There's this fixation about, journalists, we need to curtail them, we need to do all this. And then we ask questions. During campaigns, spokespersons of political parties spread lies on social media to score political points. So for us, yes, you won't run away from regulation, but what we're saying is that prior to regulation, there has to be comprehensive engagement, so that if you are going to have a regulatory framework, that regulatory framework should be such that it's capable of calling everybody to order. An advisor to the governor, to the president, and so on, a journalist, a citizen. That is what we need. Not this idea that, it's only from this side. Because we regularly monitor the media here. We do analysis. During elections, we do analysis. We have seen spokespersons of political parties posting the videos of football matches as a crowd in their rallies. What do you do to them? So when you talk of fake news or disinformation and misinformation, incitement and hate speech, you just need to analyze the trend. Take any period of time, the past 5 years, and you will see that there are problems, on all sides. There's also what you can do with the service providers in the industry, where you can, work with them to identify what constitutes hateful words, and then, all those things that can be flagged to say that these are comments capable of causing incitement. But more importantly, we need mass, literacy when it comes to what constitutes misinformation and disinformation. Have a way of talking to people. The ones that you see, and even the ones that you can deal with. How about things that people share on WhatsApp without even, checking them, and so on and so forth? So if you just feel that, once you have a law, then you clamp down, then that is not it. Because our fear really is that when you then have the social bill, it may not even be used for that purpose. Look at the Cybercrime Act, for example, for crying out loud. It's all about those who commit, internet fraud and the rest of it. But because it's used to have a section that talks about cyber bullying or whatever, a journalist puts something online, the next thing is picked up under the Cybercrime Act.
All right.
So we need to have serious conversations before we come to the point of having a regulatory framework that can work for the good of all.
All right, absolutely, Larry. We appreciate you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us on this particular topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time too.